Hello and welcome to the Large and Unnecessary First Player Talking podcast. This is episode 79. My name is Chris.
I'm Euan.
I'm David.
I'm Pawel.
I'm sorry. I was listening back to a couple of the episodes earlier on today, and I've noticed that I am laughing quite a lot at the start of the.
It's gotten worse over time. I've noticed because I now make eye contact with you every time you do it. So it's just like
and it's because I take this big deep breath in before I start.
you're inviting
And then
it.
you're
Really.
like, wee.
It is a very Larry intro, isn't it? Like,
How you doing, boys?
all good.
I'm awesome.
I thought you were nearly falling asleep about half an hour ago, Pawel.
Well, yeah, because it's, like windy and nice and cold outside, almost Polish, and then suddenly you walk into the Scottish flat and it's just warm as hell.
So it could
Jesus.
be the name of your autobiography, Pawel.
Oh,
Pawel
God.
Daruk, almost Polish.
Almost Polish.
You know what? That's so philosophical. I'm actually impressed. I like it.
Surely you'd be almost Scottish now.
That depends on the amount of haggis needed to consume.
No, I've heard you saying the word "I."
I and we and my heat.
The Nintendo console.
That's how people
I
get
didn't
involved
say
into
it.
Dinny, yeah, that's a good one. Okay, well, let's stop chatting absolute crap now. We're here to talk about video games again this week. We're going to make a bit of an effort this weekend to actually get some board games played, get together, and we'll get a board games episode. Hopefully episode 80 will be a board games episode, but nah, you're stuck with video games again this week, I'm afraid. The good news about that, though, is that we're bringing the Retro Games Book Club forward a week, because we're going to leave it another week, where we're going to do it in episode 80. But no, we're going to do it today, because we've all had a good chance to play Life and Death. So we'll do that later. We'll do it as usual at the end of the episode. But first, Pawel,
Hello.
you're going to tell us about a game which I bought and I haven't had the chance to play yet, and I'm kind of annoyed that you're talking about it now.
That's fine. That only makes me pleased more. That's what Steam is all about: buying games and then maybe playing them eventually.
Well, actually, depending on how this review goes, maybe I can refund it.
Oh no! Don't. It's
Okay,
it's
all right. Convince me.
just give it a moment. Yeah. Don't.
You're supposed to curate a massive library of games. It's like
Already done that.
It's like a sort of Victorian pursuit, like we've got a library of hundreds of thousands of books I've never read.
It's like fossil collecting. Like fossil collecting.
Yeah. Just have a
Glass-topped cabinet with your Steam games ensconced within. It's like, have you played all of these? It's like, you're missing the point.
That's not what they're for.
I pin Nier Automata down and it'll stay there forever.
That's a good point. I've not actually played that again yet.
It's preserved.
No,
It's preserved, aye.
no, we've
slightly-
already reviewed this game. We don't have to touch it again.
Slightly used, one careful owner. Okay, Pawel, tell us about Northgard.
Let's try again. Yes, Northgard. Hello. Northgard is I'm gonna call it a strategic / economic game. Although it's supposedly RTS. This game's been released very recently. Actually, it's been on early release on Steam for quite a while, but on the 7th of March it was actually properly released, and by properly I mean all the clans are there for you to choose from when you're playing skirmish or multiplayer, and there is a single player campaign as such. So, Northgard, RTS. This is not really RTS, or if it is, it's very... I'm gonna say dumbed down, but it has I don't know, a negative sound to it. The game itself is just different from what you would expect. It's very pretty, it's in a sort of cartoonish way. It has some sort of either flavor or characteristics that bring mobile games to mind, where you can do quite a lot with simple clicks, I would say, and it's formulaic in a way that you start whatever, say, mission in a campaign or a single player skirmish or a multiplayer skirmish. Essentially, you start with a territory which is very limited in size, and by this I mean that you can probably build about 5 buildings in it. You can spend some resources to raise it up to 6, so you have to choose carefully what to build. Depending on buildings you build, you'll be able to feed your populace, make it grow, and explore further territories. And each new territory will have, say, a limit of 2 or 3 buildings, and it's either going to be just a neutral territory where you can do some regular stuff like housing or lumberjack buildings, or it's going to have some specialty, whether it's ore that you can exploit by building a mine, or whether it's, I don't know, a pond where you can build your fishmonger's hut.
I'm just going to stop you there, Pawel. Turns out I have played this.
I'm
an idiot. I played it last week.
I am so disappointed now.
I've playing that many different games recently that I completely forgot. I did actually start playing this game. I did the first level.
Was it the fishmonger's huts that reminded me?
Yeah, it was. It was all these things. Yeah, it's just when you started explaining it, I was like, "Hey, this sounds really familiar." No, I did play this. So yeah, carry on. Sorry.
The main mechanic and what makes it, I think, slightly different from most games like this, or definitely RTSs, is that this game is actually all about allocating your population to various roles and swapping them as you need. You don't really do anything else in this game apart from deciding what to build where, but essentially you have a population, you have to keep them fed and happy. That's all you need, just fed and happy. Your resources might be wood and some additional ores, but essentially you've got, say, 15 settlers. Some of them will be your farmers. If you've built a farming building, some of them will be your fishmongers. You're going to have a scout who's walking about and eventually discovering new bits. And you're going to have your warband, which is, at the beginning, I think, a hero. If you're playing campaign, it's going to be a hero unit plus, I don't know, 2 warriors that you can... It's again, you grab your villager and you allocate him or her to a role. Eventually your warband may grow, but I don't think in this game you would ever have a warband bigger than, say, 8 or 9 units, really. It must have been like a really long mission for you to have that many units. So it's not a game about combat, although, strangely enough, there is a whole lot of fighting in it. It's just very imprecise, to the point where you essentially just move your entire warband from province to province, and they just automatically find their targets and fight. You've got your healer somewhere, and that healer is going to heal them as they go, or not if they don't manage to do it in time. Every RTS will have tactics and strategy behind it, I suppose. This game is mostly about role assignment.
It's all about role assignment, as far as I could tell.
And just shifting...
It's like you say, I spent my entire time just being like, okay, you stop being a healer, go and gather some food.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. And but then again, there is also lore, as in your clan, as it develops and the time passes, you're gathering these rune points, or whatever they're called. Eventually, once you pass a certain threshold, you can buy with those rune points a skill. I think there's like 3 skill trees. They're fairly limited with, I don't know, a choice between 2 options, and there's going to be maybe 20 options in total. So an example would be that you can assign a healer, you can assign role to a healer who will still be acting as a regular villager gathering food, and who can start healing you when there is a need for it. But other than that, the other sort of characteristic of the game is that the dynamics of your resource gathering and spending, essentially, your requirements for certain ores or wood or food, will change depending on the season. So the game keeps track of passing years, and whenever it's winter time, you'll be using more food, you'll be using more wood to heat yourself up. Your warriors may be weaker in winter time, so you have to plan ahead for this. Maybe build some stockpiles of food well in advance. You can boost your productivity and happiness if you spend additional food on organizing feasts. This is a temporary boost, but happiness is just as important in this game, because the happier your clan members are, the faster you get additional villagers, because I suppose this is how sex works really in this game. It just spawns a new villager.
But
because
however,
happiness.
the more villagers you get, the lower your happiness gets as well. So you have to.
No, it gets lower. The more villagers you have, the
That's
the
what I
harder
mean.
it is to keep them happy. But
I mean, see, I played the first level, and I think the reason why it's just kind of gone out of my mind, and it seemed really basic.
and it does at first.
It's
I must say.
it's like you say, it does feel like it should have been a mobile game.
And you know what? It might very well be, because it's got all the interface sort of ideas behind regular mobile games. You can play it with just a mouse. You don't really need a keyboard for anything. And it does feel at the beginning like a mobile game, like a very basic idea. There is some intricacies behind it once you get in. Say if you play a campaign and you get to your third or fourth mission and you're getting constantly attacked by mobile forces, there's portals opening and undead coming up to various provinces and you have to fight them. But essentially it's all about you being able to make the right decisions, and there is a limited number of decisions, and just clicking all those provinces in time to send your warband there. So they're not really hard decisions. The campaign itself is, I think, just an excuse to keep the solo players happy, because the narration campaign is out of a child's book as such, and the characters are one-dimensional, so there isn't much to tell about the campaign, apart from it probably being there to introduce all the clans one after another. Now, the clans themselves, apart from the fact that they're named after various animals and they have probably various colors, they don't, at the first sight, they don't really differ from each other much, because they will only differ as in some of their buildings will be different, some of their specialty as you develop them with the rune points, so some of the skills that you can buy as you go through the mission will be different. But other than that, they will have one or two special abilities which are very sort of vague, as in one of them will have better results of organizing feasts, and another one will probably have better results at their skulls, giving you more happiness. So those are tiny differences. They all essentially just play the same. So it's not RTS. It doesn't deserve that name, in my opinion. It's not tactical enough. It's not military minded enough.
I don't think it's anything. Is the problem?
I can't really give it a genre.
A weird mishmash of certain gaming trends.
Yeah,
you've got mobile-y kind of stuff, and then things like narrative choices, which seem a bit weird to have in something like that, I guess, or it's just in terms of how you. Built into the
I've played a couple of games like this before. There was a game called Majesty that springs to mind. And even things like, say, Dwarf Fortress or RimWorld. There's this idea of playing a game in a slightly abstract way where you don't make these direct actions. And rather you're a manager rather than and so you're guiding a population or whatever. And it's kind of attractive. I can see why it comes up again and again, this idea of I don't like having to keep clicking on stuff. I should be able to just but there needs, Majesty was terrible. It was a sort of fantasy adventure type thing, and you created different adventurers, and then they would go off and do stuff on their own, and you could build taverns, and they would come in, or gardens where they would come and worship, or they'd go to the tavern and get drunk, and you had to balance various factors. But it wasn't really that fun to play. ultimately. It always seems to me like it needs a little bit more. Like, it's challenging to make these games fun. The idea is initially attractive to me, at least. But when you play something like RimWorld, you're designing your settlement in RimWorld, and so there's that side of it.
I think the thing there is that like RimWorld has all the base building and all that sort of stuff that, like, you know, people like me and you absolutely love doing, but it also has a narrative element to it where you've got your little characters that are all running about in this settlement, and you start to actually care about them.
RimWorld is an unfair.
It's an unfair comparison,
because we're talking about
Northgard is very, very simple compared to it, and it's a
RimWorld is
different
giving
type of
you
game.
so much stuff to play with, so many decisions, so many factors to consider. Compared to this, Northgard is pretty in a cartoonish way, and that's as far as it goes.
They share this core idea. You've got games like Black and White, which had worked the same way, but in Black and White you had a creature to play with, and that was the focus. But the way your little village or settlement, I can't remember what it was, worked. You could assign roles to people, and they just did their own thing. And
don't get me
wrong. It was a
wrong.
lesser. Not what I'm saying is it's a common idea.
And the concept of indirect sort of, I suppose, strategy game where you don't really make a lot of tactical decisions as such, but rather just worry about the overall balance of resources and population is fine. It's just that in this particular game, to keep an eye on this balance is essentially keep an eye on just a couple of factors. So I suppose as the game, and again, I've not finished it, so you know there might be some hidden potential later on. It definitely surprises you with the level of difficulty at some point, because the first few missions of the campaign are like banal, as in you will not get surprised by anything, and you just do everything at your own pace. And then as soon as you actually get an active enemy, you're really struggling to do anything. You're barely surviving, so it's not like, you know, I'm sure the game will still surprise me. I'll keep playing it, because I have a feeling that even though it does seem basic in terms of what you should pay attention to, somewhere behind this basic feeling, there's probably subtleties of how to actually manage it that I have failed to grasp at this point.
Is there multiplayer in this game?
I think so. I'm gonna.
Sorry, you just sort of hinted towards it because you were talking about the campaign being rubbish.
There is a co-op and there is multiplayer. All of these things. Yeah. When I say campaign is rubbish, I essentially mean that the narrative aspect of it is there isn't any. Or there is, but you know.
And they're fighting undead folk. You're fighting.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I mean, you fight your. In the campaign, you want to fight whoever are the clan member, the clan of Raven, who have wronged you, because that's what Vikings tend to do to each other. But on the map, you will often find provinces with various, just say NPCs or mobs or whatever you call them. So there's going to be some wolves that will periodically attack you. Some provinces will have actual spawn points for various mobs like wolves or bears, but you know, some of them will be some ice giants. You're gonna have some undead called Draugr. You're gonna have other. You're gonna have like kobolds. You can fight them if you like, or you can, you know, trade with them. So your choice. There's a lot of tiny things like this. Yeah.
And is it effectively like mission based? Like a scenario based, if you like they give you a scenario and you have, so it's like a puzzle almost to solve.
Yeah, in a campaign you're gonna get, every mission will give you a set of targets, like reach, I don't know, this many provinces, this much food, or I don't know, destroy the enemy, things like this. Just what you'd expect from a campaign. So
and once you've done it, you've kind of done it in a sense. Like you could repeat it and it would all play out the same way. You could repeat the actions you took and you would finish it in the same way.
Yeah, I mean, there's only one way you can play an RTS, really, and this game definitely you have to repeat the same steps. I suppose the game, again, could maybe feel different if you're playing in the multiplayer, but because this is a game about balance, you have to build various things and assign various roles whilst making sure that everything is kept in balance. So whatever you do, most of the time you'll be doing the same things.
Right, okay, we're going to have to wrap this up a bit, but my main question is, do you actually enjoy playing this game?
I was enjoying the lazy pace of it. Then I got swarmed by enemies and I'm barely surviving now. So I got challenged enough by the game to say I'm gonna go back home today and I'll keep playing it.
Okay.
I know that the narrative aspect will not satisfy me, but other than that, it's actually a very neatly made game. It's pretty. It plays well. There's no bugs. It's well polished.
Okay, right. Well, thanks very much. So that's Northgard. Who's that by?
It's by Vikings, and this and Northgard is made by Shiro Games and released very recently, and I think quite popular. So it might just not be fully my cup of tea because I probably wanted it to be a more traditional RTS with people just banging their skulls.
Are you maybe just playing it wrong, Pawel?
I play wrong quite a lot of stuff.
Okay, right, thanks very much. We're going to move on, and I'm going to talk about something quite strange that I've been playing. It came out, I think it was a good couple of years ago now. And it's called Else Heart Break, and then if you want to be really specific, open bracket, close bracket.
Thank you.
This is, you can probably tell by the name of it. It's a game about coding, essentially. The coding is a part of it, and it's quite a decent part of it by what I can see now. This is it's a point and click game, which should I'm looking at Pawel now to see if he sort of perks up a bit. But,
thank you.
so it's a point and click game where you're playing as a young guy who has been living with his mum and dad, but then gets a phone call asking if he wants to take this job as a soda salesman that he applied for. But he has to go to a strange city in order to do it, so he has to sort of move out and go live in a strange city.
That sounds like Harry Potter.
Sell soda. It's nothing like Harry Potter.
Okay.
Unless you want to imply that magic is a form of hacking.
There you go! Now we're getting philosophical and everything.
You could remake all the Harry Potter stories, but just with a hacker.
I want cyberpunk Harry Potter. That would be amazing.
Pawel's demanding it.
Didn't they try to do something similar to that at Twilight and ended up with 50 Shades of Grey?
Yeah,
it's that
was a very demented person that did that. So yeah, you go to the city, and it feels like a very sort of I quite like what they've done with the city in terms of it feels kind of living. Like people are wandering about in it, and they move into other areas, and you can follow them and chat to them. So it feels like people are actually doing things in the game. They're going to their jobs and stuff. The shops close after a certain time, all that kind of thing. You go there and you meet up with your soda salesman boss, who seems like a guy that just doesn't really give that much of a toss about anything, to be honest.
His soda.
But he can sell soda, and he gives you the code for the soda warehouse, and you go and pick up some soda, and you go and try and sell it to everybody. Now, so far I have sold 0 sodas. You can wander about the city just chatting to people, using the old point and click system. You click somewhere, you go over to this person, you click to them, you chat to them for a bit. Do you want some soda? No, they don't want any soda. And it seems to be that the brand of soda that you're selling seems to be a big thing. It's people are just constantly making these sort of vague comments about that soda. Nah.
If you just approached me on the street and you offered me a different soda, I would buy it from you.
Now it seems to get. Because it feels like there's something a bit sinister going on with the soda. So it seems that people know something about this soda that it isn't clear to you as the player, or your character. And because there's a hacking element to this game, this is where I feel that it's coming in. Because as you're wandering about the city, I mean, the game kind of encourages you to wander about and open doors, go into people's rooms, rake about for a bit, nick their stuff. It kind of encourages you to do stuff like that. And at one point in the game, and just completely accidentally, I found a hacking thing. So it's just a little object that lets you hack stuff. But it turns out because there's computer terminals around, I was finding floppy disks lying about the place while I was wandering about the city. If I could find a computer terminal with a floppy disk drive, I could put it in and read it. And some of it was just really weird, hacking things. Other things were just here's a list of drinks, and then it would just give you a list of drinks, and that became clear why they did that later on. I'll get to that. But other things were people's personal documents and stuff like that. But you can go and hack these computers, and you can do various things with them, and it does have this like proper programming language in it. Like, and it's been made for the game apparently, but it's very, very similar to like modern programming languages. So it does have all the things like, you know, your var and your ints and your print and all that sort of stuff. So I was wondering about just like trying out this hacking things on different things, and it became clear that you can hack just about anything in this game. Like, so I hacked a TV so that every time you turned it on, it just changed through the channels multiple times and then told you to fuck off. So, like, you know, print, fuck off, and it just comes up on the screen, fuck off.
That's how Chris plays
This is
games.
how I play the game. I found a theremin, and I hacked that to change the pitch so that it would just make really annoying noises all the time. I also found a cigarette, and this is where I started to get like really weird with the hacking, because I started to play around with some of the other like commands that I'd found in other things, and it does have a list of like commands that you can use at the bottom of the screen whenever you hack something. So I made it so that when you smoked this cigarette, your character turned left multiple times, but then time speeded up itself. So I was starting to get to a point with this game where it's like you can hack the game.
You hack the reality of the game.
Yeah, you hack the reality of the game itself.
How do you hack a cigarette?
But that's the thing. So there's something weird going on in this game.
Yeah.
Like, you can hack anything. You can hack doors. You know, you can. Can
Can we go back to my Harry Potter idea?
So I hacked a vending machine. All right, and this is where I was getting back to. This is why it gives you a floppy disk with a list of drinks that you can find. So you can hack the vending machine to give you a completely different drink. So like, it's like a cola machine, but I can hack it to give me coffee, and I can also then hack the coffee so that it changes the amount that my character's waking level goes up. So instead of the coffee putting my waking level up by 20, I made it put it up by 100, so I could just drink that one coffee and I'm fully awake again.
Right.
Because otherwise you have to go back to your bed and sleep at certain times.
Yeah, that's just
and
boring.
this is one of the things where like the game kind of was annoying me because the days went past really quickly. Like, time was flying past, so like speeding up time with a cigarette was a terrible idea because, you know, time was already going fast enough. Eventually you can stop it, you know, you can just press a button and it stops the time speeding up. But yeah, I mean, it's so weird. Like,
Sounds really cool. I mean, I was just
Can you hack another person?
well, this is I don't know, but then this is why I think that the soda is what's the sinister thing in the game. Why people don't want to drink it. I think the soda has got some sort of tracing program in it, because I've found various computers and hidden away in places in the game where like there are traces being put on people. And I had to hack a computer. I didn't feel like I didn't have to, but I went and hacked a computer, and then I found a thing inside that computer that was actually listing the fact that I'd hacked it. That had my name, my character's name and everything in it, and it also had various logins by other people that I'd met in the game and stuff. But then you can hack the computer to get a command to clear all that list. Because I don't know what would have happened if I'd left it. Would somebody come looking for me? I don't know. Like, there's all sorts of things going on. Now, I stopped playing the game at a certain point, and that's when I hacked the computer and typed in the slurp command that I'd found in something else. And I think this might be, I don't know if this is something to do with the soda or something like that, but I typed in slurp and found myself inside the internet. And then it was like, here's some nodes that you could go to. So it was just this weird like visualization, and there was just different nodes that I could click on. And then I clicked on a node, and then I was back in another computer, came out of that computer, but then I was in a completely different room. So it seemed that I was using the slurp command to teleport from like one place to another.
Oh
but
this is brilliant.
Oh, it's
off the side
weird.
It's
It's so weird. The thing is, it's not entirely accessible is the problem with the game, because if you don't know how to code and how all this stuff works,
that's what I was saying. Like, do you get? I mean, I presume like it gives you certain commands in the game that you can.
Yeah.
That you.
But then you've got to do the whole like some of them need
like,
you need to put an open bracket, close bracket, you know, and
yeah,
all that sort of stuff, and like that's not immediately apparent. If you've tried to put code into something and it doesn't work, all right, if that code is just crap code, the object that you've tried to hack will start smoking, like, because it'll just be like, nah, it's faulty, it just doesn't work.
Right.
So you can go back in and then you can play around with it until that stops happening. But I think like it's not accessible for somebody that knows nothing about coding.
It's not like they've not simplified the code in any way. It's very kind of.
It's simpler code than most things. There's no like semicolons at the end of everything and all that sort of stuff. They've kind of simplified it a bit, but it's still, like a modern programming language. So, like I say, if you know nothing about it, you're not going to be able to do anything without actually going away and learning how all this stuff works. Some of the negative sides of this game, and it's to do with the camera, right? It's the camera controls. If I have one big complaint about this game, it's that you can only change the camera on like 45-degree angles, and they've made it so that like there's like buildings and objects are constantly in the way of you being able to see what's going on.
I was just looking through some screens of this. I want to see what this game looked like, and a lot of the pictures I was noticing, you're seeing the back of walls and things like that. It's just that isometric problem that you get with.
And yeah, but it's a problem with isometric. But I think they could have done something about that. But yeah, it's you can kind of get around it, but sometimes it can be not obvious if there's an object sitting in front of you that you can interact with or something, because there's walls in the way that you can't see, and you have to spin the camera, but something spinning the camera just puts another wall in the way. So, but the other thing is that when you click, the camera follows your person. So as soon as you click, your guy starts walking and the camera starts moving, and that can be really fiddly if you're trying to click on something that's also moving like another person, because you're just like moving about the screen. The camera's constantly like shaking basically, and you're like, stop this! I need to catch this person.
They maybe need to rethink that. It seems.
But there is there's a little story going through it. You meet there's a little love story, I think. This is why the game's called Elle's Heart Break.
Right.
There is a girl that you meet, and you're totally fascinated with this girl. Your character is anyway. You go with her. You can go with her to a club, like it's like an outdoor sort of. I think it's supposed to be like some sort of illegal rave or something like that.
Right.
There's people taking drugs and stuff. Like there's some adult things going on in this game.
Right.
And you can go with her and you chat to her and you find out that she has a boyfriend and he's probably going to turn up soon and stuff like that. I mean, you do eventually meet him and you can chat to him and stuff. I did get invited to an after party as well, where I ended up in an apartment with a bunch of girls that were all just completely off their face, and I was just like, yeah, I'm leaving. I'm not hanging about here. But first of all, I'm going to hack their computer so that it swears loudly. So yeah, like I say, it takes place in this sort of living city where there's people doing things, stuff going on. You can hack just about anything that you can find, which is an object that you can interact with. I also stole the home telephone from the family house. I put it in my pocket after I'd answered the phone for the job interview, and I ended up with it in the city. So if my family want to make a phone call, well, tough. I've got the phone with me. You do one of the other things. You have limited bag space as well, so you can only carry so much stuff with you. And I've filled my bag with like coffees and cigarettes and stuff. So
living the dream.
Yeah, living the dream. But yeah, it's a strange game. Dave, you do know some coding. I might think you might like playing with this.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating.
It is fascinating.
It reminds me a little bit of these old online multiplayer games that were around. Well, they'll still be around, but they were popular back in the 90s, where it was a bit like playing a text adventure.
Yes.
And there were ones called Moose, which I can't even, multiplayer online something, I can't even remember.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and there was a very famous one called Tiny Tim. And so it's like a text adventure, but the behaviours, the interface to each item is accessible to you. So you can create your own items, you can create your own rooms, and then you can fill them with items, and you can give them all behaviours. So like if you examine, a table, you can write in what gets put back, the text that gets returned to you when you look at the table. The description. But you can give them more intelligent behaviours than that, and they can listen for other things going on in the environment. So just when you were talking about like the cigarette, and that's how it is in these games. Everything is an object, so everything is programmable in them.
And that's that's basically what it's like in this. I mean, not everything. I mean, you can't tell a building to fall down or anything like that, but definitely just like small objects, computers, cans of Coke, that kind of thing. You can hack in this game. Pavel, you like I told you about this game a couple of weeks ago.
It's on my wish list
and it was
already.
On your wish list, yeah.
But,
and I kind of tried to convince you to play it a bit because it's a point and click, but I don't know if the coding side would terrify you.
No, there's not. It's point and click. That's enough, and It's a good thing I still have a lot of stuff to play, so I can wait for a sale. But I'm getting it. It sounds different,
Yes.
and there's some sort of meta philosophy behind it. I do wonder whether you'll get this sort of matrix, shift in the whole.
But that's the thing. So, see, I stopped playing. Like I say, I stopped playing the game when I did the slurp command and ended up in the internet.
I'm
and
quite
then sitting
fascinated
at
by
another
the whole
computer.
concept, I must say.
Because then I just went, okay, this city's actually it's not huge, but it's big enough for you, like for a point and click game that you know it'll take you a while to get round everything. And when I found myself in a completely new area, I was just kind of like, that's enough for me for today, sort of thing. You know, I'd had enough. I'd got that to the point of fatigue with the sort of clicking, wandering about a city trying to find things. So I was just like, that's enough for me. The slurp command has just opened the whole game up to me, and now I just don't know what to do.
But do you feel like, apart from the initial thing, you got a couple of narratives where you're there to sell the soda and you meet this girl, whatever. Is the game doesn't sound like it's pushing you in any particular direction. It's just giving
Not
you.
really. I mean, it gives you little things. I mean, like I say, when you go to that after party, or when you meet the girl for the first time, she tells you to go to this like illegal rave or whatever it is with her, but you don't have to go.
Yeah.
Like she's like, meet me here at 9 o'clock, but like you don't have to go meet her. And like when you go to the after party, you don't have to go to the after party. You can go and do what you want.
Right.
So yeah, it is kind of open ended. I don't know what happens if you don't do those things, because I kind of did do them just because I wanted to see what happened.
I think that's the bit that sounds most interesting to me when you were talking about it. That's what I was wondering. I was like, what happens if you don't do these things? But maybe, often in these games they just cycle.
They maybe just repeat
it cycles
yeah.
round again somehow, and so.
But I don't know because I didn't do it. So yeah.
I think that's the thing I'd most like to see is actually the city operating, this idea that it is a living city and everything is kind of, everything sort of possibly affects each other. Yeah, it just sounds really interesting.
I did feel a bit stalkerish because I went to the shoe shop where the girl works that you meet, but there's another girl working at the till on that particular day that I went in there, and she was getting really weirded out by me constantly asking where this girl was, like I was a stalker, and I basically got asked to leave.
Awesome. No, I do wonder what sort of twist.
It's an interesting game, and I want to get back to playing it at some point soon, because just talking about it here actually just made me want to go back and play it now. But I want to see like how far you can push the hacking in it. And it turns out actually, because I've only got a small hacking device, and I think you can get bigger ones so you can hack other things. So I don't know. I just don't know how far it's going to go and how weird it's going to get.
Weird is good.
But yes, elseheart.break, open bracket, close bracket. Check
good
it
title.
out. Check it out if that sounds interesting. I don't know who that's by actually.
It is by Eric Svedang.
Oh yeah, it came out in 2015, and it's been on my wish list since it came out. So, it's been around for a couple of years now.
Because it almost feels like the entire living city and everything in it isn't really real as such, but rather it's all probably some sort of layer or tier of.
But that's the other thing, because the people you meet in it are so weird as well. So it's hard to tell whether is the whole city just coded.
I think it would be, yeah.
That's it. Are people just doing things because they're coded to do that? If you get a bigger hacking device, can you hack the people? I don't know. How far are they going to push it?
There was a similar twist in Transistor, and it was brilliantly executed. But it was such a different game. I'm going to play this one because I'm intrigued.
Cool. Okay, well, I think we need to move on. Right, Dave, what have you been playing?
Yeah, well, if you were listening to the podcast last week, you might have noticed me crowbar in a few references to a game called Path of Exile while Pawel was talking about a completely different game. It's something I like to do from time to time.
We all appreciate it.
And one of the reasons I did this is because I've been playing a lot of it, and I think it's fair to say it's been a transformative experience in my life. I have never played a game like this before, and it is so fascinating to me, the mechanics of the game itself, but also pretty much the community that surrounds it and the behaviour of the people that play it. But what I didn't say when we were podcasting last week is what the game actually is, and it's what's called an action RPG.
That's it, a Diablo clone, yeah?
Yes, that seems to be. I'd never heard of this term before. ARPG, action RPG. But from what I can gather, basically it means it's a game that's like Diablo 2. So if you played Diablo 2 or any of his successors, such as
you mean Diablo 3?
Diablo 3, Path of Exile, Grim Dawn, I think Pawel mentioned.
Grim Dawn, yeah.
There's a bunch of other sort of minor
Torchlight.
ones. Yep, there you go, Torchlight. Even if you've played something like Borderlands or Too Human, you'll have experienced the loot 'em up side of it, which is a huge part of these games.
Yes.
I think it's not considered an ARPG if you don't get a tsunami of loot that 99% of you're not interested in, and you just leave lying on the ground. That seems to be a touchstone of these. I don't know why.
I don't know why people call RPGs.
No, I know. Yes, because it's not this. Yeah, well, this game is. This is somewhere where Pawel would say this game is not an RPG, and in this instance, I would agree with him. In terms of Path of Exile, he is 100% correct, because there is nothing. You do not play a role. No, you're not invested in your character. Even the guilds in in Path of Exile, nobody really gives a shit about them. There's none of your identity is projected onto the game itself. Your character has as much identity as a set of perks in Call of Duty. It's that mechanical in Path of Exile. So yeah, I can get why. Incidentally, I should point out that Pawel owns a copy of this game, so you know.
Everything you're describing about
it is free though, isn't it?
Yes, but
everything you're saying about that is identical to Diablo 3, really. I mean, there's no investment in.
Yeah, well, that seems to be
what's going on in
that
Diablo
seems
3.
to be part of it. And so, but ARPG, that's what they seem to be called. And I've been spending a ton of time playing this game, as I said. Now, we're not really got enough time for me to go into all the nuances of the game itself, so I'm probably going to talk about it a bit more in the future, because there's a lot to say about it, I think.
Okay, fair enough.
Steel yourselves for that, listeners.
Yeah.
You're right, because we're going to have to fit in our next section. And historically, for the last... We've done it twice, and it goes on for a bit. So, but it deserves it, because this is one of the most interesting segments we've done, and the only one.
Hey, what about my underwater segment?
No, Dave, your underwater segment is not a segment.
It was a short-lived mini-series.
Yeah.
It was cancelled
early. After the second episode, yes.
Get ready.
Right, Retro Games Book Club this week then. Euan, it was your choice. What have we been playing?
I chose Life and Death from 1988.
Excellent.
The same year, by the way, just incidentally, as I was researching it, that EA, Electronic Arts, released Zany Golf.
All right.
Because Crazy Golf was a bit too balls out for them. Let's just make it a little bit zany.
Was it pay to win?
At that time, they hadn't really cottoned on to these ideas. I mean, they were only...
I bet they were thinking about it.
They were only just slightly developing their greedy bastard tendencies. But yeah, Life and Death is a surgery simulator.
Yes.
It's more than a surgery simulator. It simulates simply being a doctor. In Life and Death, you play you're an abdominal surgeon. And essentially it takes you through. Yeah, because I was
wondering, why is it always a belly?
Well, yeah, this is the thing.
Because doctors have specializations.
There is a follow-up.
You're not a general practitioner. You're a surgeon.
I was wondering why there's no way.
God, I hope I don't fall ill in Poland.
It's anybody, he'll cut you open. Some guy on the corner.
Give him enough.
Give him a pack of tabs.
Give him enough vodka, and he'll be all right.
He has a knife. I mean. Yeah, I mean there is a follow-up where you play a neurosurgeon, and this game's still sort of knocking about. The PC version is still pretty much in use. It's one of the few kind of basically realistic surgery simulators in existence, and I played this when I was very young with a friend of mine, and we would essentially just botch surgeries for a laugh. we had no idea what we were doing, and in replaying it for this segment, I decided to go in with that sort of that in mind and didn't bother really looking up anything. So kind of went through the early stages, just trial and error, and it's a tough game to kind of to get your head round.
It's a tough game because they basically try to make it as realistic as possible.
Yeah.
Because, being a surgeon's tough.
Exactly.
It's complicated.
And it's quite a dry life, apart from the blood.
Well, I don't know, because some of the things that like the nurses telling you off and stuff, and some of the things that you get said to when you're in the medical school when you fuck something up.
It's also tough.
It's quite hilarious.
It's also tough because you're performing quite delicate surgery with a mouse.
Yes.
Which...
Yeah. And this is one thing that should be stated, that the only input for this game is the left mouse button.
Yes.
You do not
stuff.
at any point use another... Because I tested it as well, because I was trying to find, it's like... The one thing I couldn't work out was you're asked to check your pager. A couple of points. You have to phone someone. The nurse says, so-and-so is waiting on line 4. And apparently the numbers are available from your pager, which I haven't worked out how to access. But I did find that if it's line 4 and you just press 444444444, eventually it'll call that number.
Yeah, that was strange, wasn't it? I was trying to press just a single digit and then something else, and nothing was happening.
If you can enter.
I don't understand it. It's like it's the copy protection.
Yeah, it's
the
the copy
phone
protection,
rings, you look it up on the table, put the number in, and then you never have to do it again.
I don't have a table.
It's online.
You can find the table online.
I never found the table. That was the problem.
Did you not listen to last week's podcast?
We did. We discussed this.
When I talked about this.
I never looked at it. What I ended up doing was switching over to the Amiga version, which is slightly more polished.
Oh no, the Amiga version's horrible though.
It doesn't have as nice sounds when you're palpating the patient's belly. When you're palpating the patient's belly in all 4 quadrants, palpitating in all 4 quadrants, not leaving any quadrant out because you'll get told off by the doctor for that. The sounds on the original Atari PC version are very nice.
Yes.
Yeah, some good screams.
Whereas they're a bit more sort of subdued and effeminate on the Amiga.
Right. Let's get into actually what happens then, because you start off as a doctor who...
You're a trainee doctor.
You're a trainee doctor, basically.
You're given a lot of leeway.
You're basically just like, you got to sign your name into a little clipboard and you're like, there's a patient waiting in a room for you. So you go into this room and it's just clicking things to go into various rooms because it's an 80s game. And you have a patient lying on a bed and you can look at their clipboard and stuff, and there's various things, just tells you what their symptoms are. There's boxes at the bottom, but it's like, so you can send them, you can refer them, I think, you can medicate them, you can just wait and watch them. You can send them for an x-ray, for a scan, and I think operate is the other choice, isn't it? Yeah. And you can also look at the patient's belly, so you can get this screenshot. Well,
you click on their
pixelated
belly,
version of a belly, and you can click around it, and you can see where the pain is, and they just start screaming in various points. Did either any of you just keep clicking the belly?
I've clicked it for it. I was enjoying the sound.
I thought you might do, because eventually the nurse starts getting really annoyed at you.
Starts telling you on.
You stop doing that now.
I have fond memories of that game because of that belly. Because I was young, and this was possibly one of the first naked bellies that I got to see and touch with my mouse. And I actually remembered this game because I saw that belly. I think have I played this game? And then as soon as you examine the patient and I was shown the belly, it's like, yes, I know this game. I remember this. I remember how bad I felt when they were, making painful noise when you would touch them and stuff like this. So those were experiences of my youth. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Are we finding out that this was Pawel's sexual awakening?
I think it might have been.
Only with a belly can stick in the mind that way.
It was also, before I knew any English or had any medical knowledge, not that I have nowadays. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's still blacksmiths and pliers and hammers when you need anything done to you. But back then, I was
a circular saw at the back of your head as
you
well.
Could, I suppose you could do it, yeah. But back in the day, I just remember attempting to play in this game without I could sort of tell where the nurse is sending me because there was a number 1 or 2, so you would know eventually which room to go to. But other than that, I was just clicking things randomly.
I think it would be very difficult to play this game without being able to read what
be
it
impossible.
says.
Symptoms.
Yes.
I would never be able to
Because
read that.
it's very much trial and error, and you rely on the feedback that the game gives you to tell you that you prescribed the wrong course of action for the patient based on their symptoms after you touch them up a bit.
And that's it,
That's
because
what you have to do.
I demanded to operate on several people who had kidney stones.
Yeah, I did that as well.
And they kept telling me off.
But mainly just because you want to see how the operation works. But I mean, like, we're getting back to it though. It's like, when you're prodding the belly, there's different areas of the belly that you prod, and whenever they scream in pain, like based on that, and this is where it comes in, like the medical knowledge needs to come in, because like if they're hurting everywhere, then it's like
Bacterial
it's
infection.
bacterial infection, and you have to give them antibiotics. The game doesn't tell you that. Like, you have to then go back to their clipboard and say medication. But you know, if you get that wrong, then you get this really stern-looking doctor saying you did that wrong and they're dead now. Like,
I say they're remarkably resilient. It's like,
Oh yeah.
they're at first very stern, and then they're like, now report to medical school.
but then you go to medical school, and that's where they tell you this is what you should have done.
Yeah.
And then you go, all right. So what they're saying is, like, if it hurts everywhere, it's bacterial infection. You need to give them medication. You're like, okay, right. So I'll go back to the next patient. That doesn't hurt everywhere. It hurts on both sides. So you operate on them, and then you get told after you've killed them on the operating table they had kidney stones. Like, what you doing?
But it's like, even that kind of procedural part of the game, I actually quite enjoyed the fact that you were going through this, and you felt quite responsible when you were okay. You got a patient, go check and think, okay,
Yeah.
And when you correctly start diagnosing stuff and you take the right course of action, you're like, you suddenly
I'm
start
getting the hang of this.
Yeah, you feel like wandering up to the to university and demanding your PhD.
Yes. But the problem is, I mean, the game does come down to the operating table. Like,
That's where it
this is the
really
main part of
comes
the
to
game, right? And this is where everything gets fucked up, because like there is just a bunch of stuff on a table. Like, you know, you've got scalpel, you've got all this, like, there's loads of drugs lying in different drawers that I've just got. They're not labelled properly. They've just got letters
They're
on them.
labelled with the first letter of the name of the drug.
There's loads of instruments that you have no idea what they are. Like, you recognise, like, a clamp maybe, but there's other ones where
you don't know what this is.
Especially if you don't have the manual, which I think all of us have played this game in the past, and I think pretty much everyone I know who played this game didn't have the manual for it.
I never played it before. But
So, but even if you do have the manual, a lot of it still isn't explained in the manual.
Yeah, there's lots of little things that you kind of have to do, because it's quite sort of like you have to go through all of it. You have to wash your hands, you put your gloves on, you apply antibacterial gel to the patient's belly, you put the drape across, because you don't need the whole of them exposed. All these like preparations and things that you have to do.
That drape is what they would refer to in Path of Exile as a noob trap. Because it gives you the impression that you should be draping off a specific area.
Yeah.
Big mistake.
But yeah,
don't
did
do
that as well.
Make it as wide as possible.
Yeah, make it massive.
No, that's
Make it like
Make it the size of the screen
make
if you
it the
can.
size of the back. Well, all you're doing is making life more difficult for yourself.
But I did that. I got to a point where the first time I'd cut through all the different layers, I had this tiny box.
It's like, you've got like an inch left, and it's like, okay, now I have to remove the intestine, a section of the intestine through this, and they're like,
it's like,
small.
the intestine's not there. You've
What are you going to do now, doctor? What are you going to do now? You're like, I don't know what I'm going to do.
I suppose it's comical to imagine that happening in actual surgery.
What I did was, in that situation, was just administered a load of atropine and just like killed the patient.
Just walked off.
Just walk away.
So, yeah, I mean, you do have to go through every actual stage that you would in a proper surgery. The drape thing being a problem on the Amiga, because what happened, there's a glitch on the Amiga one which didn't happen the first time I did it, but has happened every other subsequent time, where as soon as you try to apply the surgical drapes, no matter where you put them, it covers the entire screen in blue surgical drapes.
Yeah, I get the impression that Amiga version was a port.
It's probably
a slightly lazy one. despite having better graphics.
There is one thing, like the nurses do give you little nudges in the right direction. So, like, you know,
Well, this is a great aspect of it.
That
It's
is
your
good.
two assistants
Yes.
that you take with you into the
and
operating.
you can change them as
Yeah,
well.
you have to take the right ones because like certain ones of them have like they don't work well together. There's like enmities between
Oh,
some
I
of
had
them.
no idea. Is that right?
Oh yeah, there's 6 to choose from, and each has their own specialisation. And it tells you, like, Beverly Cabe works particularly well with Ken, whatever his name was, or David Mangler, but had a failed relationship with one of the other people, so they don't work. So if you take people who don't like each other, they're very unhelpful. Whereas if they work well together, you get more useful
Yes.
feedback. Although it's not as useful as it could be, I feel, but it's better.
Yeah, well, I mean, I did take a screenshot to send to my girlfriend just to show her what I was actually playing, and it's just it's Kimberly Brewer telling me, "Okay, doctor, you've got your gloves on."
Yeah.
I like, thanks, Kimberly.
They do keep you updated.
Yes, they do.
But some they are useful though. They tell you when you've clamped the bleeders, and that's, that's very
or
helpful.
Or they tell you to clamp the bleeders.
Aye.
You've got to clamp those bleeders.
They also tell you when your patient's heart rhythm's going all over the place and you have to do something with some sort of drug.
Right.
Again, trial and error.
Well, if you take the cardio specialist, he will tell you
Which drug to
which
use.
one to use.
Ah,
but
that's
eventually you will learn that.
Aye.
And then you'll choose not to take the cardio guy because you'd
Well-
rather take the guy who specialises in appendectomies, because that is what you're doing.
I mean,
after all.
Well, there was,
I wrote a list.
I see
I've got this
the,
list here which tells me what drugs to use in what situation. So, and definitely, I mean, atropine I've just got as the death drug. If you want to kill somebody, just give them that.
well, initially, I mean,
Well, that was one of the first highlights of my replay of this game. One of the first things I did was administer atropine instead of antibiotics.
Yeah, I did
At the
that.
start,
I
and
did that
that-
exact same thing.
That's an immediate
I
fail.
fell for the A. The A
Same
on the A on the needle. It's the B one that you want.
that's it's fair. Trial and error, like you said. Might as well try the A. I mean, let's follow some kind of logical path.
So,
And you
no,
do have
that
to-
was the wrong thing.
You do have to do things like you got to put blood in the. There's
in
there's
the
a little drip thing, and that will run out over the course of your so speed. Well, actually, so you've not only got to be kind of smooth with how you do things, you've actually got to do it like relatively quickly because things
Yeah.
will go on. The longer you take in your surgery, the more it's going to affect the patient and things like that. And that's when they start telling you to like inject them with drugs and like put other
Well, that's
stuff
it.
in
I
the
mean,
drip.
but like clamping the bleeders, you have to do that quick.
Yeah.
Because that the patient will bleed out quite quickly if you don't do that.
Yeah.
And you also got to use what's the thing? The
Cauterizer.
The cauterizer, yeah, to then do that. But then I made the mistake I made a massive incision, alright, and left the clamp things on, and then moved into the next layer of skin, alright. Now somehow the game lets you do this. It's stupid because you would never do it would never be possible to just tear somebody open with all these clamps on them. But then I used cut the next layer, used all the clamps and that run out of clamps.
Yeah,
You do run out of
you
clamps.
can
I think
run
you
out
only
of
got
stuff.
about 10 of them or something. But
That's just-
it doesn't show you that, but they just disappear off the tray after a while, and you're like, oh god. And the patient just bled and bled.
But that's the strength of this game, and I guess the whole point of it in terms of like its usefulness as a simulator is it lets you make ridiculous mistakes. Slashing the patient's belly open while they haven't turned on the gas is a favourite of mine.
Yeah.
But you can only do it for like a half a second and then the game just puts you out, yeah?
The first time I made an incision, I made a square.
Well,
Just to see if I can
Peel it
tear
off.
a flap of skin off.
What
Turns out you can't.
what you're saying, Pawel, is a slight irritation of that game is that sometimes it gives you some leeway, and then there's other things where immediately, as soon as you do it, the chief of surgery comes into the room. So, like, if you attempt to make an incision from
Without
the
the
bottom,
gas, yeah.
oh well, no, I mean, okay. Obviously, if you attempt to make an incision without anaesthetising the patient, you get a horrific scream, which scared the shit out of me. And then, I mean, that's understandable. It was like, maybe perhaps you shouldn't be conducting surgery. But there are other things, like if you try to make a second incision, it'll immediately fail you for that under most circumstances. It's a wee bit annoying because there are things, like there's a couple of times, like not getting the right spot and not having a big enough space to work with is such a frustration in this game. And there were occasional bits where I was like, can I not just make the incision a little bit wider? And it just doesn't cater for that. But then there are other areas, like like Euan's talking about, like you can accidentally puncture the bowel if you don't incise the I can't remember the membrane that covers your organs. There's a particular way to do that, and if you do it wrong, you'll puncture the bowel. But it allows you to repair that, and that's really cool. And, you can suture the puncture that you've made on the bowel and continue the operation. And there's a few things that are like that, where it gives you a wee bit of leeway to correct your mistakes.
Is it because those would be actual mistakes that actual doctors could make?
That could happen, I suspect. That's something that could, even with the finest surgeon, that could still happen. So that's why it's included in there. I assume.
That makes sense.
Well, it's a lot of work to kind of get to the point where you can actually perform and complete one of those surgeries. Because I
never got to that point.
Well,
I got quite far. I got the appendix out. I had a good look at it. Well, not out, but I got it in my hands.
All right.
I had a good look at it, and then I was like, I don't know, I've got to cut something, but so I just stabbed it randomly, and I killed the patient.
Yeah, actually, that's the point where I had to look at the surgical procedures manual, because I got to the point where I'd made all the necessary incisions and drained it. You have to take a sample to go off to the lab, and you have to drain all the liquid, and I could see the bowel, and you can lift it out, and if you don't pack it with gauze, it just keeps falling back in, which is absolutely hilarious.
That is, I kept clicking and clicking and clicking, being like, come on, eventually you have to get this out without it sliding back in again.
Can I just say, now that we're on it, I was having real problems not killing the patient, because I've realised that I'm actually suffering because of the graphics are obviously very old, but still, your imagination is there to fill the gaps, and I actually have a little bit of a thing against the insides of the body, and I was just not really enjoying the fact that I have to lift some of those things, and and that's better just stab him and go for the next one.
Sorry, just on an unrelated note, I went onto my phone there to try and look up what Life and Death, like who made Life and Death for the end of this review, and it's open on the page, where is the appendix? So obviously I looked this up while I was playing.
Yeah, well, it gets you into the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole, once you get the appendix out, like such that you can actually see the appendix, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that you have to do.
Yeah. But that's the thing, I got to that point and I thought, am I going to have to put this person back together again? Because I hope not.
Well, so you have to go through the whole thing, because you get your head round making the incisions and going through the layers of tissue, and then it's like, okay, I know how to do that, and then suddenly you're presented, okay, green liquid's coming out here, and it's all messy and weird, and I don't know what to do.
Yeah, if you clamp the appendix in the wrong place, it will discharge liquid, and you have to drain it again, and you have to do all these extra things. So yeah, you do. The little manual definitely helps, because the stuff they tell you in medical school for the actual operation part, the actual removal of the appendix, once I got to that part, then I went to medical school, I was like, this is too much.
Yeah, there's too much information.
It's like a huge list, and it's like there's an artery that has to be tied off and removed, and then you have to clamp the appendix in two places and do a purse suture and all this stuff. So yeah.
It's very realistic, is what we're saying about this game.
But I did, in the end, this took me many, many hours.
Yeah.
To finally, and I have removed the appendix and closed successfully. One time I left a clamp inside them, but it got told, but it was just the one. So I was like, that's alright. But even after you do all that, it's not considered a full success, because my McBurney's incisions are just not straight enough.
Yeah.
It's
I can't get in trouble for that as well.
We'll judge you on
it's like you've got to do perfectly straight McBurney's incisions.
So does it mean this game at some point actually does say you've done everything right, congratulations, game over?
No, it's not game over. Then you can go on to the second operation, which
operation.
is the repairing an aortic aneurysm. But
obviously,
I've not done enough appendixes, and I've not done them well enough, so I've still not seen what the next operation is like.
I know. I mean, there is an end point to the game. That's what you're asking about. I mean, you go through. Once you have successfully, to the game's standard, performed the operations after years of trying, then you will have completed the game, I guess.
Goodness me, I'm still just touching bellies, really.
You're still chatting to the receptionist.
Oh, yeah.
Just give them a good palpating.
I'd say this is a fascinating bit of video game history. Like
It really is.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
That was made in the 80s with such realism is utterly weird to me.
It was interesting because obviously we brought that up last week. You mentioned Mavis Beacon being also made by the same folk that made this, and they did seem to be like a crew. They were Software Toolworks, they were called, and like a lot of their kind of development history was they're involved in like things like early AI programs and stuff like that, and they seem to have like a very varied catalogue of things that they've made. So not just games, but kind of other
Yeah.
educational stuff as well.
Still early days for the PC software industry. Yeah, I mean, in terms of gaming, in 1988, it was definitely not a case of the PC master race. Absolutely not.
No.
If you look at the Mac version, compared to the PC, the 4-color graphics in the PC version, it's like a different world. I mean, and that doesn't help. Like trying to close an incision that you can barely see and trying to stitch it up, and I was like, where is it amongst all these pixels?
Yeah, that was a problem. That was like sometimes even seeing where the bleeders were bleeding was a problem in some areas because it was just mixing with all the other colours. I'm like, is that blood or is that just red pixels?
Still very satisfying to play though. Loved it. I was really happy to go back and play this. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, good shout, Euan.
No, it's been one that's been on my mind
worthwhile
for a long time. I just very fond memories of botching surgeries as a child. Just not having a clue what to do.
A statement nobody should ever have to say. Right, well, we're going to have to pick another game for the Retro Games Book Club next time, so Pawel, it is your choice. You're the only person that's not picked one yet.
I know, and as Dave's just suggested a moment ago, I would really like to play Dune 1 from ages ago again, because I have very fond memories of it, even though they're unclear. But, you know, screenshots are online all around, so one can easily remember the best bits of the game. So yeah, I can't say much about it just now, simply because I only remember that I enjoyed it quite a lot. But other than that, I think if we all give it a go, I should be able to acquire it somehow and share and stuff.
Yeah, just so you know, it was released on the Amiga and PC, I believe. But there is definitely a Mega CD version which I played in as a kid. That's the version I played. It was a Mega CD. So yes, it does exist. I wasn't lying.
I've always wanted to play this game, so
there you go.
Definitely.
Nice one, Pawel.
Let's.
Okay, right. The only other thing I'm going to announce is that I'm going to come up with a devious quiz for you three. It's going to be video games related, and there's going to be rules and everything. You're going to love it.
Can we Google tank?
So sorry.
Is there going to be a guns tank?
It's not the early 90s, Euan. But yeah, I'm going to try and get that ready for the next video games episode. So we'll see how we get on. There's going to be some very Hanratty-esque questions in there, so be prepared. Look up all the games and stuff that I liked to play when I was younger and up into the modern times. So let's give out the internets. If you want to email us, you can email us at firstplayertoken@gmail.com. That's FIRST. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube. We have a PSN community. We have a Discord, which is discord.me/firstplayertoken. Those are all First Player Token as in FIRST. The only exception is Twitter, which is @1STPlayerToken.
Which you can remember as Once Player Token.
Now, welcome back, Euan, by the way, because Dave had to do your bit last week.
Oh, did he? Oh,
yeah. He did it quite well, actually.
I'm not sure how I feel about that.
My Twitch username is Unnecessary Chris, and we are part of the Podnose Network.
UK's leading entertainment podcast network.
Dave did it better last week again, sorry.
I don't know, I think you're just having me on. I'll have to listen to this episode now.
Any news in the Podnose front?
No, still plugging away with lots of... There are a few new things up there. I think they've just been updated. Things Wrong with Things podcast, yes. A few episodes of that, and I think George's Jaffa Cakes series has extended into yet another different podcast instead of continuing with the one that he's doing. So there's I can't remember what it is. It's something with Jaffa Cakes in the title.
Right. Is this the Jaffa Cakes for Proust?
Well, there was that, and then there's another one that's popped up that I just happened to see the other day, and I've completely forgotten what the title of it is. But it's looking at something else.
Okay, right, fine. So if you
sorry
want
for that vague description.
if you want to check out the Podnose Network, you can go to podnose.com. Whole bunch of podcasts there, a variety of different topics, and I think we're still the only gaming one there, so we'll keep that.
So far,
we'll keep that in the trophy cabinet. We'll be back next week, hopefully with a board gaming episode. But until then, thanks for listening.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.